I know we're probably all in different time zones, but I'm in Toronto, Canada. I would love to hear where you're all from. It is 1 minute after noon here in Toronto. If you want to, I'm just gonna write in the chat here. Hopefully we'll get lots of people participating in the chat. Let us know where you're from. I'm in Toronto, Canada. Hello. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here, and welcome to my open office hours. I absolutely love doing this. I love hearing your questions. So if you're here, I'm guessing either you have communication skills questions or you're interested in elevating your communication skills, right? So you can certainly sit back and listen, but I encourage you to participate in the chat, or you can even use the hand up sign, and I'd love to chat with you directly in the video as well. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then we're going to get right into it. I had a couple people send me questions in advance, and we'll go through a couple of those, and then I'm going to open it up. So please share with us who you are, where you're from. We can all connect with each other and network with each other on LinkedIn while I'm going through these questions. But first, I'm going to introduce myself. I see some familiar faces and names here, but in case we haven't met, my name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki. Please just call me Andrea. I'm an executive communication coach here in Toronto, Canada, where I coach ambitious executives, probably like you, on their communication skills. And I do this through one-on-one coaching, through small group boot camps, through corporate workshops, through keynote speeches. I also have a podcast, the Talk About Talk podcast, with, as of last week, 171 episodes. Last week, I was thrilled to release the episode where I finally interviewed Seth Godin. So 6 years ago, I participated in Seth Godin's inaugural podcasting fellowship, and that's how I really learned the art and science of podcasting. And then I heard him interviewed by someone, and I thought, you know what? I can ask him better questions than that. So I challenged myself to ask him questions that I've never heard anyone ask. And if you want to give a listen to that one, it's episode number 171 on Apple, on Spotify. I'm on YouTube now, or wherever you get your podcasts. So I do, as I said, coaching, workshops, I have the podcast, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm guessing that's where most of you probably heard of me. I have got a LinkedIn newsletter there, and I'm there almost every day. So if we're not connected already, please send me a connection request. I would love to get to know you more. In terms of my background, I worked in brand management at Kraft Foods. If I had to choose a discipline, I would say it's probably marketing or psychology. After I was a brand manager at Kraft Foods, I went to Harvard Business School and I earned my doctorate in marketing. And my research was actually on interpersonal communication and word of mouth marketing and consumer psychology. So you can see how this is kind of, I guess, prompting me or providing me with the relevant experience to become an executive communication coach. When I graduated, I was on the faculty at the University of Toronto Rotman School of Management, where I taught marketing in the MBA program there. At the end of every marketing course that I taught, I would always save one lecture to talk about personal branding. No matter what the course was, all of the material, I would say, can help you with your personal brand, and we talk about that. So I coach folks now, and I do these workshops and boot camps on topics like you would expect from any communication coach, right? On things like confidence, formal presentation skills, storytelling, listening, how to deal with difficult people. More and more, I've been doing work on helping you establish your personal brand. And by that, I don't mean turning you into an influencer. I mean establishing your unique professional identity. And then I've done some boot camps on that. And based on the success of those, people have asked me what's next. And what's next is really a new boot camp and more of a focus that I'm doing now on how to establish executive presence, right? So you have your foundation of communication skills, you establish credibility, and then you can make an impact. And we have a boot camp on that as well. You can learn all about this, all these opportunities to learn more from me if you go to talkabouttalk.com. Yes, I make it really easy. Talkabouttalk.com. You can find everything there. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know some of you better here now and learning what your communication skills questions are. I want to out of the gate share with you that the framework that I just used to introduce myself is what I outline in podcast episode number 86, which is the number one most downloaded podcast of the 171 to date, including the one with Seth Godin, although we'll see what happens with that. I, I created this framework based on conversations that I had with my coaching clients who said, I don't know how to introduce myself. I don't know what to say about myself. I don't know how long to talk. I don't know what flow to follow. And so I created this framework. It's present, past, future. So it's not chronological. You start with who you are, the present. Hello, my name is, I am. And if we work on your personal brand, then you'd follow that with what your superpowers are. And then you go to the past and you establish credibility. So I just did this, right? I just introduced myself and I told you what I did in the past, working at craft, earning my degree. These are all things that I'm hoping will help establish my credibility in your eyes. And then the last step is the future. So what are you excited about? Can you demonstrate enthusiasm about something in the future? And I talked about some of the future programs that I have. And I also talked about how excited I am to hear what your questions are. So in addition to being, I'm just pulling something that I'm going to put into the chat here. In addition to this framework being is it already in the chat? Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Jennifer. There's also an HBR article. I'm not sure if it's in the chat already. There. So this article, if you want to click on that, and you can read it after, it's a really quick article, basically wrote up the framework, sent it to Harvard Business Review. It was published a week later. This was in August 2022. And last year, in 2023, it was one of the 3 most downloaded articles at hbr.org. So I'm just telling you this to convince you that this framework works. It gets a lot of traction. People love it. Read it and try it out yourself. Okay, so speaking of introducing ourselves, I'm going to kick this off with a question from a past boot camper that I got from email yesterday. Her name is Jennifer. I'm just going to read this, okay? I printed this out for me. It's related to self-introductions. That's why I wanted to kick off with this. Jennifer said, I always introduce myself and I want to be called Jennifer, but there are always people automatically shortening or changing my name to Jen or Jenny. I know there are other Jennifers who go by Jen or Jenny, but that is just not me. Yet I don't know how to correct people without sounding rude or unfriendly. Andrea, can you help me? So I told her, thank you for the question. I'm going to kick off the Q&A, the open office hours that I have, by answering that question. I also emailed the answer to her. I'm not like making her. So I said, I have 3 suggestions. So those of you who have ever listened to my podcasts or seen my posts on LinkedIn, you know I am a huge fan of the power of 3. Okay, I see some head nods. That's a different Jennifer, by the way. That's not the same Jennifer. So I'm a big fan of the power of 3. This is like a bonus hack for you. If you're ever wondering how many strengths to say about yourself if you're in a job interview, how many details to provide about yourself when you're introducing yourself, how many reasons to tell your boss that your recommendation is the one that he or she should follow. If you're ever wondering how many, make 3 your defaults. Okay, so in my answer to Jennifer's question about how to politely encourage people to say her name properly, I've got 3 suggestions. The first one is obvious, but we don't always do it. Really clearly introduce yourself, right? So when I introduced myself, I said, my name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki. Please call me Andrea. So how you want people to call you, just say it straight out in your self-introduction. We're going to get into this in a second, but if there's something unique about your name, how it's said, what it rhymes with, what it sounds like, say it right up front in your self-introduction. Sometimes when people, incorrectly shorten your name as they do with Jennifer's, or they pronounce things wrong, they will catch on eventually when they hear you introducing yourself clearly. Okay, so step number 1, introduce yourself really clearly and don't hesitate to elaborate on your name. So I said to Jennifer, when I emailed her, I said, Jennifer, as in 3 syllables. I never use Jen or Jenny, right? And just keep going, right? So you're just telling people, this is my name. In the same way I say, just call me Andrea. People ask me all the time, by the way, is it Andrea or Andrea? And I'm like, however it rolls off your tongue, it doesn't bother me. So that's the first thing. Clarify your name when you introduce yourself. The second thing that you could do is reference it casually or even make a joke about it. So for her, I said you could say, I'm just not a Jen or a Jenny. I don't know. I can't get my head around that. I was born Jennifer and that's my name. Like just make it into a light thing that's like not a big deal. You're not offending people by correcting them on your name. This reminded me that my son, my 17-year-old son, recently moved out. He's playing semi-professional hockey and he's living with a billet family. And there's another hockey player living with him from Russia, and his name is Vasily. And I was like, I was like, is it, how do you say it? How do you pronounce it? He goes, Mom, just think silly. That's how he introduces himself. He says, the word silly with a VA at the front is Vasily. I'm like, and I will never forget how to say his name, right? So this is the bonus. When you reference your name, people will find it more memorable. And then my last suggestion, my third and last suggestion to Jennifer, if you're encouraging people to say your name correctly, whether it's pronouncing it or not shortening it in her case, is to mention your friends. And I've noticed people doing this and it's so eloquent. So if someone said to her, hey, Jenny, whatever, I said, just pause and say, my friends call me Jennifer, right? And then you're implicitly saying to the other person, I count you as a friend. So say my name the way my friends do. So those are my three suggestions. If you have a name that other people may think is difficult to pronounce, or it's not as memorable, or you want to correct them, first of all, clarify in your self-introduction. Secondly, make it into a joke or casually reference what your name is, even something that it rhymes with or sounds like. And the third thing is mention your friends. My friends call me. Okay? So that's my answer to Jennifer. And I thought I would kick that off. Oh, I love this. My name is Milana. Sorry, I'm dyslexic here. My name is Milana. It rhymes with banana. I'll never forget your name now. Never, never. I love it. Okay. Who has a question for me? Raise your hand, or I'm looking in the chat. I do have a couple of other questions that people sent me in advance, but does anyone here have a, there must be people here that logged in to ask a specific question.
Hi, Andrea.
Alana, hi Alana.
How are you?
I'm well. I know Alana. I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. I do sort of have a question. I'm working in a new organization, and there are certain ways of speaking. It's a very like gender inclusive place, and I have to change how I speak a little bit. But I can't seem to remember because I say things like, thanks, guys, bye, guys. Do you have any recommendations?
Okay. I love this question. Partly because I'm biased and I got busted doing the same thing. The first time I ever taught in the MBA program at the University of Toronto, at the end of the class, you have to hand out the survey and they rate you out of 7. And then the students write comments. And I got this comment a few times. We're not guys. So when I was growing up, I know this is irrelevant, but when I was growing up, and my intention was I meant inclusive everyone, right? So
Me too.
yeah, I'm sure, right? So I noticed that other professors were using different words, right? They would say folks. And
A
like
lot
I
of
said,
people say folks.
yeah. So what I did was the next time I went in to teach, I bring my handy teaching notes in and I put them down on the desk in front of the class. And in big letters, big enough for me to see, not big enough for them to see, was the word folks, right? So if you're in a Zoom meeting online or whatever the context is, it may be at the top of the meeting agenda that you have, or maybe you put it on your phone somewhere. I would remind, and I use this hack not just for words that I want to replace. If there's any kind of new habit I'm trying to adopt, I put it in front of me everywhere. So, Alana, I guess my first answer is note what other people are saying instead of guys that might register for you and seem natural, and then choose which one works for you. And then how do you remember? You plaster it everywhere. So when I'm trying to adopt a new habit, I put it at the top of my to-do list that's on my phone or on my computer. I write it on a post-it note and I put it right beside my keyboard. If I'm in online meetings and I want to make sure I am saying or that I'm not saying something, I'll put it right by where my camera is. I don't have any there right now. I remember when we first started doing all these online meetings, I had a post-it note that said, "Look at the camera," right? And then it becomes, after a while, it becomes second nature. But I find that if you just remind yourself by physically putting the word or words as reminders around you as much as possible, um, after a while, it'll just become wallpaper and you've adopted the habit. And then you can adopt a new habit, right? Then you can learn something else. Does that help, Alana?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Good luck at your new job.
Thank you.
I know you're going to knock it out of the park. I think
With
Alma
your
had a
help.
Hello. Yeah, my name is
hello.
Alma and I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Nice. I was just there at Tulane University. Beautiful.
That, that's where I work. So I have a question. Since English is my second language, I am very much concerned of pronunciation because I am afraid it will take credibility away from me. Lead the hazardous waste management program at Tulane in all campuses. There is a lot of chemical words, processes that I have to pronounce, and I am always so concerned that I would say, like sometimes there are chemicals that finish in amide or amide. I don't know which one it is. And I'm so concerned about credibility, losing credibility. What do you have to say about that?
So, Alma, first of all, the fact that you're so concerned about saying it right, and what I'm hearing is it's not just because, or it is not because you don't feel good about it. It's because you don't want to make a mistake. So, first of all, kudos to you for just being focused on performing with excellence, right? Like on technically doing your job well. That stands out for me because a lot of people come to me with questions and it's like they ask the question because I feel some certain way and you're saying no, it's because I want to really do my job well. So kudos to you for that. Your English is clear. I don't know about everybody else here, but I can tell you for sure, I don't think I missed any words. I heard every word clearly. I can definitely tell that we all have an accent, but an accent relative to, how I speak as a Canadian. So the research shows that when we can understand each other, regardless of our accents, as long as we can understand each other without too much effort, we won't confer any negative emotions or attributes or traits to the other person, right? So as long as people can understand you, and I noticed that you slowed down a little bit. Were you doing that consciously?
No.
Okay, so I'm really fascinated with this whole idea of accents and cadence. So when we hear other people speak in when we listen to someone speak another language, or if they have an accent and we can't understand what they're saying, we always perceive that they're speaking really fast, even though they might not be. And there are some languages where the cadence, which is the speed, is a little bit faster. But for the most part, all of the languages in the world have a very similar cadence. It's our perception of other people. So if you have an accent that's not familiar to the people around you, the first thing that you can do to help them is slow down. And I think you're doing already, Alma, an excellent job of that. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to say is that I always say this to everybody. This is a very common question, right? It's what do I do with my accent? It's like, don't erase your accent. Your accent is not a liability as long as people can understand you, right? You're already slowing down. You're speaking very clearly. Obviously, you've put some effort into learning the language and you've succeeded. So keep speaking a little bit slowly when you're communicating with people who maybe aren't as familiar with the accent, and remind yourself that it's not a liability. In fact, it can be an asset because it demonstrates two things. It demonstrates your global experience or your experience from afar, right? You've obviously lived and been somewhere else other than Louisiana. And it also demonstrates that you have a growth mindset because I know that you know at least two languages, right? So these are all things in the back of our mind that we're reading when we hear people speak with accents. When it
How
comes
about
to,
the credibility?
sorry, yes, exactly. You're helping establish, and you could even reference yourself. Like I can't remember what the department was.
Oh,
What's it?
the Office of Environmental Health and Safety.
I work in the Office of Environmental Health and Safety, where I lead the blah, 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 and I have experience, all right, and people can hear that you also have experience from somewhere else, and they'll probably implicitly code that. They'll hear that signal loud and clear. If you're afraid of saying something that is going to be coded by them or received by them or interpreted by them incorrectly from a technical perspective, I'm a big fan of spelling it. In fact, when I'm meeting people the first time, I'm a visual learner. I will say, I did this the other night. I was at an event with a bunch of amazing women, and I was meeting all these people, and they would tell me their name, and I'd be like, "Can you spell it for me?" And in my head, I would be writing it down, right? And so if you can spell it for people, and it sounds like if you're talking about chemicals where there's an A versus an I, you've got to make sure it's really clear. So I would spell it.
So am I correct that if I misspell, I may lose credibility? I mean, if I mispronounce, will I lose credibility? The reason why I'm so concerned is only 25% of females are in this field. So I need to, I listen a lot because to establish myself.
Yeah.
And not me so much. I want the university to be recognized eventually as a authority in safety without having a death or a serious accident.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
so I don't want to lose credibility.
Yeah. So two things I want to say. One is I'm not going to do the power of three here. It's two. One is I know that the academic research says that as long as people can understand you relatively easily, even if they perceive an accent, it is not a negative. So as long as you're making it easy for them, and I can imagine, especially if you were in some kind of crisis, like a health crisis situation or a safety crisis situation in that role, there's adrenaline going. You just got to remember, slow down. Okay. I can't remember what the other thing was. What you just did there is also very impressive because you brought it back up to like a corporate objective. And I don't know about all of you. I was just talking to some folks in a boot camp about this. When there's someone in the room who brings it back to remember what's on the meeting agenda here, like this conversation is important, but let's go back to our objective, or this seems like a tangent. Can we talk about that, or parking lot that? Remember, our corporate objective is this, and you're saying our department's objective is to maintain health and safety, and that's my goal. You just said that unprompted. That's very impressive.
Thank you for your help.
They should promote you. Who else has a question?
I have a question. Hello, Dr. Andrea. My name is Jojo Shum.
Jojo?
Yes, Jojo.
Nice to meet you, Jojo.
Nice to meet you too. So this question is related to work. I'm currently a manager in the banking industry, and recently I've been doing some networking to build my career, and I feel like I would like some advice related to like maybe networking in a more executive setting. I'm confident speaking with peers like managers, senior manager, directors. I don't know if there's a difference in the topics that are discussed or the language, like the slangs that is used. I'm happy to just be myself, but I just kind of want to know like if there's any advice you can give. And I also noticed because I work with kids outside of the banking industry a lot as a math and coding teacher, I find it hard sometimes to skip back and forth because obviously the tone and the language I use with kids, which makes me very successful teacher, is not the same as in a banking environment. So do you have any advice for me?
Well, that's impressive that you're going back and forth from being a teacher and then you're working with banking peers and clients, and you're interested in, I guess, increasing the seniority of the people that are in your network. When I teach strategic networking, I encourage people to strategically focus on trying to get at least one mentor. This can be someone inside or outside your organization that you're really open and honest with, and who's going to give you advice. And usually they don't influence your career, but they are on your side and they help you, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is try as you might to get a sponsor or a champion. So this is a person who probably is in your organization who can help pull you up in your career. There's a lot of research about successful women in particular, but I think this holds for everyone. In fact, I know CEO at one of the big banks here in Toronto, who I'm personal friends with, told me that he attributes much of his success. He's very humble because he's obviously knows what he's doing, but he attributes his success to having a sponsor who pulled him up through the organization. So you also want to have that if possible. And then the third thing is the thing that I hear you doing, right, Jojo? And that is to seek diversity in your network. A couple years ago, 5 years ago, when I was doing this podcasting fellowship with Seth Godin, I looked at my network, my in-person network and my LinkedIn network, and I noticed that my network was full of podcasters, marketing professors, and brand marketers. And I was thinking, I'm trying to establish this new business. This isn't going to help me. And the same thing goes when no matter what role you're in, your network is going to be more valuable to you and actually more interesting, right? If you have people in various industries, in various functions, geographically dispersed, and also to your point, senior and junior people. So your question though is about how to, I guess, resonate with more senior people.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a culture or topics or just general language that, like I can get more familiar with, or can I just kind of be myself? And I think I'm not sure if there's any advice you can give on that or how I
Yeah.
should approach it.
So I would think about two things. I keep violating my rule of the power of, but I'm going to do it again. So I wrote an article in Inc. magazine over a year ago called "Forget the Rehearsed Elevator Pitch and Try This Instead." Right, and it was about like you get on the elevator and there's the CEO or someone from the C-suite who's there, and everyone's like, "Oh," and then they think I should have a rehearsed elevator pitch. No, you shouldn't. So my answer is basically what I said in that article. The point is really two things with whoever you're communicating with, but maybe even more so when you're communicating with like the VIPs, is number one, make sure you know what your superpower is, so that when you introduce yourself to this person, you're emphatically clear. Like, I am an executive communication coach. I thought about those words, right? Very like, do I say communication? Yes, I do. I'm putting my stake in the ground. And what do I do? So it's like the first step of your self introduction, the who you are and the what you do and what your superpower, you absolutely have to nail that. So that can take some work, right? In terms of establishing your personal brand, but that's the first thing. Is the most successful people, successful and happy people that I coach are the ones that have taken the time to really think about who they are and what they do. And then it's not that you're saying you're good at everything, but I know I'm good at this. And then you'll have confidence, and your identity will be very clear, right? So that's the first thing.
Okay.
And then the second thing is, don't make it all about you, right? Like, these senior people are used to people coming up and kind of giving them their elevator pitch or their sales pitch. Say to them, like, if it's someone whose work you could say, I know that you just released this new initiative in the organization, and I want to tell you how it's impacted my work, or how it's impacted my team in an amazing way, right? So get it right back to them. And then you could ask them, what are you working on next? Right? So the part one of the answer is be confident about your personal brand. And part two of the answer is shift it back to them. Talk to them about something that they care about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll try that for sure.
Who else has a question?
I have one question. Hi, Dr. Andrea. I'm Harshit. I'm here from New York.
Nice to meet you. I recognize your name, I think, from LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, we have been connected on LinkedIn. Thank you for hosting this session. I have a follow-up question, I think, on what Jojo just asked. When you're talking to senior leaders in a work setting, there are interruptions that come from them. Those are questions, those are clarifying questions, or as they say, testing whether my thought or process is right or in the wrong direction. How do we handle those? Because those are all senior people, and their decisions do impact your career. And without being defensive and coming out as, hey, I'm in the same team and I'm in the same thought process that you are having.
So it's when the senior person interrupts you or asks you and they have some objections or
Yes.
a question that's a little bit off topic.
Yeah. And how do we respond so that we don't sound defensive over there,
Yeah.
Hey,
So that's a fantastic question. Thank you. I have a general answer that I think can help a lot of you in many contexts, not just this, but in particular, because I've gotten this question as well. So if you're dealing with someone and the stakes are high, you're on stage or it's a senior person who's asking you, right? How do you respond in a way that is respectful, but that's true to you? And I say, focus on your growth mindset. I know that sounds really general, but let me be specific and tell you exactly what I mean by that. If you have a growth mindset, you're never going to come across as arrogant or as really uncertain, because if you follow this definition of a growth mindset being, I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more. By the way, this has been my mantra whenever I'm walking out on stage. So now I love Q&As and I don't need to give myself a pep talk anymore, but I used to sit here and go, I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more, and then get into the meeting, right? Like, and I'm reminding myself, I have done the work. It's true. I've done the work and I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more. So you don't actually say those words to the senior person, but you could say, interesting. Based on my experience and the work that I've done on this project, here's where I would have landed on that. But I'm curious about, right? So you're implicitly following this framework of, I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more. And when you remind yourself of what you do know, your confidence will be elevated. And you're also reinforcing your brand, right? Or your expertise with the person. So based on my expertise, based on my experience, based on the work that I've done, here's what the numbers are telling me, or here's what the conclusion that my team came to. That said, I always want to learn a new perspective. And I know you have a different perspective. So can you elaborate? And then ask the person questions and they'll be like, okay, so it's not like you went, oh, you disagree with me? Which is the worst thing you could say, right? So
yeah, no, I agree to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems similar. It seems simple. It may seem too simple, I guess, but it works. When I've gotten myself in a situation where it's, the stakes are high and someone questions my authority or they disagree with me, I just remind myself, I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more. So then I restate what I think, why I think it, and then I open it up like, but I'm curious or I want to learn. And every time you say something like that, you're reinforcing your value to them, right? Does that help? I can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes.
Yeah. So when we are interacting with these same senior leaders, their attention span varies. It's because there are frequent emails that's coming in, and I'm in a room and I'm seeing them. Okay, now that one is checking his emails, and then you look at someone, answer someone, and answer to someone, and then you see, oh no, this person has gone out of the loop. So how do you bring them back to the conversation that I'm driving, and how do I keep the control of the meeting in my own hands?
Ooh. Well, I mean, you can't scold a senior person,
Oh,
right? And I mean, it sounds like it's almost like they're interrupting and they're just demonstrating their power by stepping in and saying something that might not even be relevant. This sounds similar to, I didn't do the research, but I read the research on interruptions. People expect that other people who have more power will interrupt people that have less power, and it does not affect what we think about the people that have less power. So I'm thinking we can take this and maybe overlay this insight from research to your context. Other people in the room who have been paying attention know exactly what's going on. And so you just have to handle it with grace, right? That said, what I said at the beginning also, I know impresses people. If you can bring it back to, this is a great point. I will definitely follow up with you on that. We're here with the people in this room for the next 30 minutes to talk about blah, blah, blah. And our objective is about, people are always impressed if you bring it back to an objective or a strategy or a principle that you decided on in advance. Like it's like, well, I was talking about it the other day. It's like you're zooming in and zooming out, right? Like they get into the minutia and you go, hang on, let's zoom out and pivot a little bit over here to where our objective was, right? So you can zoom out and zoom in. And if you can do that, you'll impress everybody in the meeting and you won't offend them. And you can also do it in a way that you can flatter them. You can say, that is absolutely something that we need to consider. Can we parking lot that and talk about it after? And we're going to zoom back to our meeting objective. Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to now read a question that I got this morning from someone. I have it on my phone here. I think this is a really important question for a lot of people. If not for you personally, you probably know people that are wondering about this. It's when an individual's on the market for a new job or the next chapter in their career, what are the best practices for communicating that we're searching for a new job, demonstrating our expertise and conveying our valuable impact on LinkedIn specifically, without placing the green open to work banner on our LinkedIn pages? Okay, I love this question. I have a pretty emphatic opinion. Do not use the open to work circle on your profile image on LinkedIn unless you're like in your 20s. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a very successful executive recruiter, and I said, this is a really common question that I get for folks that are looking for work. Do you put open for work? And she said, no. And I said, well, what about, our boys that are, because she has 2 sons as well, that are in university or in their 20s? And she goes, that's different. That's different. Don't put open to work on your profile unless you're in that. Except I've heard this morning on the news, I heard that, what company was it? I think it's Amazon was telling, might have been another company, whatever, big company was telling everyone they had to come back to work 5 days a week, and half of the employees put open to work on. That's a different situation. They're like trying to tell their employer something. So unless there's a strategic reason for you to do so, do not do that. So what do you do instead? Okay, what do you do instead? You double down on your networking inside and outside of LinkedIn. So what does this mean? This means you are responding to every single invitation that you have for a networking event on LinkedIn or elsewhere online, or even in person, maybe even especially in person, with a yes, and just get your butt there. Okay. And I've got all sorts of advice on what to do if you're in these online and especially in-person networking events. Make sure that you're doing that. And then make sure that your profile and your communication on LinkedIn very clearly highlights your expertise. So, newsflash, LinkedIn is an algorithm. So when my friend, the executive recruiter, or any of her hundreds of thousands of peers are looking for someone to fill a role, they are searching, technology expert in the insurance industry, or chief marketing officer in consumer packaged goods, or whatever it is, right? So you want to make yourself discoverable in your LinkedIn profile. How do you do that? Make sure that your headline, the characters underneath your name, you have 220 characters. I want you to look at, maybe when you're done here, make a note after this open Q&A, after the office hours. Check out my headline and look at every single word that's there. I promise you, every word has a reason for being there. And ask yourself if you can add more words to your headline to do the same. Words like manager or executive, I mean, that nobody's searching for a manager or an executive. Think about your industry, think about your function, maybe your geography, think about your leadership style. The word lead is excellent. If you have a title that's like a vice president or a director of or whatever, these are the things that are that you want to have in there. So make sure your headline is crystal clear about what your expertise is, and make yourself discoverable. And then the same thing in your experience, you want to highlight the impact that you made, not just your job description, but actually your wins, how you helped people make money, save money, or solve a problem. And your about section. Your about section should be written in first person. Okay, it should be, yes, and thank you, Priscilla. I have, if you go to the bottom of the talkabouttalk.com website, or you can click here, at the bottom of the homepage, there's a bunch of free resources, including a tip sheet for LinkedIn. So your about section should be written in first person. That means I. It's friendly. It's still professional, but it's more friendly and it's first person. I do this. and you can follow the self-introduction framework, right? Start with who you are and what you do, then establish credibility, then talk about next steps or the future. And make sure, back to this discoverability point, make sure that all of the keywords that you want to be discovered for are in your about section as well. Okay. So your profile, you need to make sure that you've updated and optimized your LinkedIn profile. And then what do you do on LinkedIn? You share your expertise. Okay. So it could be writing a thought leadership piece. You can write one article without having subscribers, right? You can publish an article about something that you have an opinion on. There are easier things that you can do as well, right? You can comment on something that's in the news. You can take someone else's post and repost it, but always don't just repost it with no comments. Always add your own comments, right? So I have a column on Inc. magazine, and sometimes one of my fellow columnists will write about something that I have an opinion on, and they'll say, here are 4 reasons why you should whatever, and I'll be like, actually, I have a 5th reason. So I'll say, I love this article by so and so. I would add one more. Or if someone says, here are 7 ways to do something, you could say, my favorites are number 1 and number 3, and here's why, right? So you're demonstrating your expertise with every post that you make. So how do you do this? Create your own posts from scratch, repost other people's posts, find articles in Fast Company, Harvard Business Review, Inc. magazine, and so on, and post them with your comments, and then get into other people's feeds and share what your comments are. I've actually made a lot of good friends on LinkedIn when I notice people making really smart comments. There's a guy named Tom Meganson who is a copywriter. So he's a really smart writer. He writes advertising and other copy. And I saw stuff that he was posting. I was like, this guy's really smart. So I ended up chatting with him, and then I ended up interviewing him on my podcast. So you never know what's going to happen, right? You can meet some fascinating people. I hope that answers the person's question.
Andrea, I'm Jen with 2 N's Agni. That was my question. I am currently in that situation, and I'm in career transition, looking for a healthcare leadership role in operations and clinical services and healthcare tech. So I thank you so much for taking the time to go through that. Excellent points. Love the reposting with personalizing the comments in regards to an addition or a favorite. We'll definitely take that away and execute on that.
Amazing, Jennifer. And is it ever Jen or Jenny?
Always Jen with 2 N's.
Oh, Jen with 2 N's. Okay. But this is a different Jen, by the way, from the other Jennifer that I was talking about. So the way you just introduced yourself, Jen, I hope that all of those words are in your headline, right? You said health, tech, operations, and so on and so on. Those words, think about what the words are that you want to be discovered for and make it crystal clear, especially in your headline. Okay?
Great. I'll revisit that and make sure they're incorporated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Who else has a question? I think I have.
Hi, Andrea.
Hello.
This is Milana, rhymes with banana.
Love it.
I do have a question, kind of coming off of what you had just been talking about with regards to LinkedIn for those searching for work. I am actually a new founder, and so I'm trying to build a personal brand on LinkedIn by sharing my story, but obviously I'm very new, so I don't have a highlight reel to share as of yet. And so, a lot of what I talk about is just character evolution, less so business results. And so I just wanted to know if you have any advice on what I could do to elevate the work that I'm doing, elevate my personal brand in the absence of wins.
Okay. So I've got a couple of answers for you. One thing that just crossed my mind, I think I have a link for it here somewhere. So if you all go at some point now or whenever to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I'm a top voice in personal branding. If there is a topic that you want to get that for, it's not easy to get it. If you follow this prescription, it will happen. So hang on, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in the chat. So what you have to do is contribute to collaborative articles on LinkedIn, probably, I know this sounds painful, 1 a day for a month. So I would write like 3 or 4 at a time, and then I would just put them out one at a time, right? I actually had a file on my computer, and and they're limited. I think they're limited to, I can't remember what it is, something like 600 words. So they're short, but pick a topic. So I this link that I put into the chat is the index of all the topics. So don't just write one topic and then write something. So I wrote them all about personal branding, personal branding, personal branding, personal branding, personal branding. And then boom, one day I got it. And I go back and every week I check, it says you're in the top 2%. And I make sure I'm in the top 2%. Last night I added another article. I hadn't done so for a week, right? So this is one way, all of you, whether you're employed or unemployed, you have expertise, you have something to say, choose a topic, answer a collaborative article question on that topic every day for a month, and maybe you'll beat me and you'll get in sooner than I think mine was 3.5 weeks or something like that it took. If you want to establish yourself as an expert, Milana, that might be one. I mean, it does take some effort, but I'm sure based on what you just told me that you have expertise that you could focus on there. How does that sit with you? It's very tactical.
No, it is. I think like the challenge I have is that a lot of founders that I am affiliated with or that I follow on LinkedIn, they talk a lot about results. And that's what gets a lot of the engagements as well and the shares. And so I think my challenge is when I talk about my business, which is very new, I don't have that to share as of right now. Right now it's more of the struggle. It's the lead up to what I hope culminates as something bigger. But I can't say, oh, I got listed in retailer X, or, my sales have gone up 20%, or, my, etc. Right. So it's like in the absence of having that to share, a lot of what I'm sharing is like, I used to be more introverted. Now I'm a lot more, I'm changing the way that I operate and, networking and doing all these things to grow my business and my personal brand. And that's what I'm talking about. And so it's just sort of like, I don't know that is necessarily giving me that same credentials or credibility that, the other founders that have tangible results to share are getting.
So you don't have quantifiable numbers or metrics to share, right? And you also, because you're new, you don't have testimonials. So sharing your expertise in a disciplined and strategic way is what? Did she just oh, there you are. Sorry, my whole screen just moved around. So here's the step-by-step. I'm gonna share with you what I share with my clients. The step-by-step process that I would recommend that you go through, Milana, is it's 1, 2, 3. Surprise, surprise. It sounds like you're trying to say things without doing the heavy lifting up front, which is establishing what your personal brand is. So I always tell people, what differentiates me, I think, one of the things that differentiates me compared to other coaches, especially personal branding coaches, is that I'm not going to, share with you, here's your calendar of when you're going to post things. We're going to go back to basics and we're going to identify who you are. So I have all sorts of resources on my website. If you look at, there's one of the tip sheets at the bottom of the homepage. It's called the What's My Superpower worksheet. That might help you identify what your superpower is. It's really about identifying who you are, what your expertise and your passion is, and with a real focus on what makes you unique. So I always say in my boot camp, unique is better than better. Stop trying to answer the questions the way the interviewer or the way your potential customer or investor is looking for, and think about what you add value, how you add value in a unique way. Unique is better than better. So the first step is creating or identifying your personal brand. Step 2 is communicating. And it's so much easier to communicate when you've done the hard work here, right? So it's garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out. So forget how you're going to say what you're going to say, right? And just take the time first in a really disciplined way to think about who you are and what you do. And there's all sorts of guidance to do that on my website. I have a boot camp coming up in November. I'm in the middle of one it's not October yet. September, I have a personal branding boot camp. I have one in November that's coming up in 1 month, and it takes you through those 2 main steps. One is identifying or articulating your brand. That's the step that a lot of people skip. That's the most important. And then step 2 is so much easier. Like, what do I say on my LinkedIn profile, right? How do I engage with prospective customers? It's so much easier when you've done this work. And then step 3 is really communicating with confidence. This is where you start with a foundation of communication skills from, confidence and listening and storytelling and all the things I talked about at the beginning. And then you ratchet that up to focus on clarity and confidence. And once you have clarity and confidence, you get credibility, right, Milana, right? Like as soon as you're speaking succinctly and clearly in a focused way, you're going to establish credibility. And then that's when you can make an impact. And someone's going to say, so this is what I did with my podcast. I was focused on communication skills and people were listening. And then business owners started to contact me and say, can you do a workshop for my team? Right? I know you're going to have to cold outreach your customers too, but at least you'll know what to say. In October, starting on October 9th, so we've got a couple, I think 2 weeks, but actually the program starts on October 1st. In the month of October, I do have an executive presence boot camp, which focuses on all of this. So it goes from the foundation communication skills to credibility, to impact. And we talk about like, how do you demonstrate leadership? Whether you're a boss or whether you're a business owner or whether you're just a solopreneur like I am, how do you demonstrate leadership in a way that really resonates with people and allows you to get what you need to do done? Priscilla put it in the chat there. Both of them are there. A little behind on the chat. Thank you, Priscilla. We have a discount right now. Save $200 if you. Hang on, I'm going to copy and paste this and put this in. If any of you are interested, if you're interested in either one of them, you can message me and I'm happy to chat with you. There's also a button on my website where we can meet for 20 minutes and I'm happy to chat with you and give you free advice. It's not a sales pitch. But I just added this this is a sales pitch, this part. Between now and Friday at midnight, Toronto time, if you use the coupon code October 200, you save $200 on the October bootcamp, and it's virtual. So I've got programs that cover the answers to your question, Milana, but my general answer is first focus on who you are, then start communicating, and then start working on elevating that up to credibility and impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right. That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I've got a question from the squares on my screen keep moving around. I think he's gone. Or she, I'm not sure. Somebody had a question. Who's got a question? Bandar, you're there. I don't know why.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for the invitation, and I really appreciate it. Thumbs up on all the points that you mentioned. I agree with all what you said, and especially the open to work and participating, choosing all the keywords that you'll be posting on the profile about, or let's say the introduction about yourself. I would recommend something. Since that we have an issue with, let's say, writing an article. Sometimes if we write an article, we find, let's say, no respond or no participating from other people. So why don't we, maybe if you can initiate this and let's say we open a group on WhatsApp or Telegram, and you can invite all the members in case anyone has wrote an article, that we can share it over there and then we can participate. So that participation would make it go through a lot of members in LinkedIn. That would help us on, reaching more people, and make an interaction with, different countries. Since I guess everyone here from, different country from the world, worldwide countries that the people who's participating here. And this is it. Thank you very much for the invitation. And in case of any further opportunities or let's say activities that you'll be doing, I'll be glad to join and I would glad to attend these activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bandar. I think it's very smart and strategic to think about, when I go into these Q&As, I have had the situation where there's people in the audience and everyone's quiet and nobody's asking questions. So I always have questions. I read you a question off my phone. That was Jennifer's question. I had this other question that somebody sent me from a previous boot camp. It's similar, right? If you're just starting out, you're not getting a lot of traction on LinkedIn. Ask some people. You could even message them on LinkedIn. You could say, in an hour, I'm going to post, or I just posted this. Send them a link to it and ask them to like it. So as I said before, LinkedIn is an algorithm. So one of the things that the algorithm is doing is it's checking immediately after something gets posted, does it get traction? If you can figure out a way for people to like it beyond just the strength of your network and be strategic about it, like he was saying, I think that's a very smart thing to do. Like I said, I did that for this Q&A session by having a couple questions prepared. All right, it's actually 1:01, so we've gone 1 minute over time, but I want to thank you all for the fantastic questions. You can probably tell I really genuinely, truly do enjoy these very much. I can't wait to talk with you more on LinkedIn. And like I said, if you have any questions about the October or November boot camps, you can find the information on my website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn about it, or you can also set up a consult. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.